The cemetery was empty except for me and the fresh mound of earth that marked where my 3-year-old daughter lay. 6 weeks had passed since the accident, and I still came here every morning before dawn, when the world was quiet enough that I could pretend she might answer when I whispered her name. Lily, my sweet Lily with her father's green eyes and my stubborn streak, who insisted on wearing her princess dress to grocery stores and sang made-up songs about butterflies. The headstone was small, pink granite with carved roses around her name. I'd chosen it myself while my husband David sat in the car, unable to face the funeral director's showroom of children's monuments. That morning, October 15th, started like all the others since the accident. I sat on the damp grass, tracing her name with my fingers, telling her about the dreams I'd had where she was still alive, where the semi-truck had stopped in time, where she hadn't run into the street chasing that red balloon. The guilt was a physical thing, a weight that pressed on my chest until breathing became conscious effort. I was her mother. I was supposed to protect her. I was supposed to hold her hand tighter, react faster, be better. My phone rang at 6:47 a.m., the shrill sound shattering the cemetery's peace. I almost didn't answer. Hardly anyone called anymore, having learned that I couldn't bear their sympathy or their careful avoidance of Lily's name. But the number was from the hospital, and for one wild moment, my heart forgot she was gone and worried she might be hurt. "Mrs. Emma Hartley?" The voice was male, professional but strained. "Yes? This is Dr. Marcus Peterson from St. Mary's Hospital. I'm the Chief of Pediatric Services. Mrs. Hartley, I need you to come to the hospital immediately. There's been a mistake." The words didn't make sense. I stared at Lily's headstone, at the teddy bears and weather-worn drawings other mourners had left. "What kind of mistake?" "I can't explain over the phone. Please, just come to my office on the 4th floor. Come alone, and please, don't speak to anyone about this call until we've talked." Before I share what happened next, before I tell you about the impossible truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about the worst day of my life, I need you to understand something. Grief isn't just sadness. It's a complete rewriting of your entire existence, where every thought, every memory, every plan for the future has to be adjusted to account for an absence that feels bigger than any presence ever did. If you've lost someone, especially a child, you know what I mean. And if you haven't, I pray you never do. But either way, I need you to hear this story, because sometimes the truth is so much stranger and more terrible than anything we could imagine. If you're watching this, if you've ever felt like the world has played a cruel joke on you, please stay with me. Like this video if you believe everyone deserves to know the truth, no matter how painful. Because what I discovered that morning changed everything, not just about my daughter's death, but about who I could trust and what people are capable of when they think no one will ever find out. My name is Emma Hartley, and until 6 weeks ago, I thought I had a perfect life. Not perfect in the Instagram-worthy way that my sister-in-law Rachel always posted about, with her designer handbags and vacation photos from Santorini. Perfect in the quiet, content way of someone who had everything they'd ever really wanted. David and I had been married for 8 years, together since college when he was studying architecture, and I was getting my degree in elementary education. We'd bought our little house in the suburbs when I was 7 months pregnant with Lily, painting her nursery soft yellow because we wanted to be surprised by the gender. David came from money, the kind of old New England money that meant his mother, Catherine, wore pearls to breakfast and had opinions about the proper way to fold napkins. His father, William Morrison, had built a real estate empire that David was supposed to inherit, but David had chosen architecture instead, designing sustainable homes for middle-class families rather than luxury estates for the wealthy. It had caused a rift that never quite healed, especially after Lily was born and we refused to hire the nanny Catherine insisted was essential for proper child development. "You're depriving that child of opportunities," Catherine had said at last year's Thanksgiving, watching Lily play with blocks instead of the expensive educational tablets she'd brought. When David was her age, he was already in Mandarin lessons and junior violin. "She's 2, Mom," David had replied. his jaw tight. Let her be too. Rachel, David's younger sister, had smirked from across the table. She'd always resented that David was the favorite, despite rejecting the family business, while she'd gone to law school, married a senator's son, and produced two perfectly groomed children who called their grandmother Grandmother Catherine and knew which fork to use for salad by age 4. Rachel's children, Maxwell and Sophia, were 7 and 5 and already had trust funds larger than most people's lifetime earnings. "Well," Rachel had said, examining her manicured nails, "I suppose not everyone can provide certain advantages for their children. It's admirable that you're making do." Making do. As if loving my daughter, reading to her every night, teaching her to be kind and curious and brave, was somehow less than the private tutors and baby yoga classes Rachel's children endured. As if the way Lily would curl into my lap and say, "Mama, you're my best friend," wasn't worth more than all the money in the Morrison family vault. But I'd held my tongue, as I always did at these family gatherings. David would squeeze my hand under the table, and later, when we were home, we'd laugh about it. "Someday," he'd say, "we'll stop going to these things altogether." Someday never came. The accident happened on a Thursday, September 2nd, 3:17 p.m. I know the exact time because I just looked at my phone, thinking we had time to stop at the park before David got home from work. Lily was wearing her favorite dress, the purple one with butterflies that she'd worn so many times the hem was starting to fray. We were walking home from the corner store where I'd bought milk, and she'd charmed Mr. Chen into giving her a free lollipop, the red one that turned her tongue cherry bright. The balloon vendor was set up on the corner of Main and Elm, like he was every Thursday. Lily loved the balloon man, that's what she called him, and would wave even when we weren't buying anything. But that day, she'd been so good at the store, and I had a $5 bill in my pocket, and the way her face lit up when I said yes, we could get a balloon. She chose red, of course. Red like her lollipop. Red like the roses in our backyard that she helped me water. Red like the wagon David had restored for her last birthday. The balloon man tied it to her wrist, but she wanted to hold the string herself, and I let her because what harm could it do? The wind came out of nowhere. September wind, the kind that announces autumn's arrival with sudden authority. The string slipped from her small fingers, and the balloon danced across the street, bobbing just low enough that a 3-year-old might think she could catch it if she was fast enough. "My balloon!" She darted between 2 parked cars before I could grab her, before I could scream her name, before my feet could move. The semi-truck was going the speed limit. The investigation confirmed that. The driver wasn't texting or drunk or distracted. He just couldn't stop in time when a small girl in a purple dress suddenly appeared in front of him, reaching for a red balloon that danced just out of reach. They said she didn't suffer. They said it was instant. They said a lot of things meant to comfort me, while David identified her body because I couldn't stop screaming long enough to stand up. The balloon, somehow, survived. It floated there above the scene, its red cheerfulness obscene against the September sky, until finally it drifted away, taking with it the last moment my daughter had been happy. The funeral was held 6 days later at Morrison Family Chapel. Yes, they owned that too. Catherine took over the arrangements when it became clear I couldn't make decisions about caskets and flowers while sedated on whatever the hospital had given me. The chapel was filled with white roses, Lily's favorite flowers transformed into something formal and cold. Rachel read a poem about angels that Lily would have hated. She was afraid of angels after seeing a cemetery statue that looked scary sad. David's eulogy was beautiful, talking about how Lily had taught us to see joy in small things, but I barely heard it through the haze of grief and medication. My mother had flown in from Portland, my sister Sarah from Seattle. They flanked me like bodyguards, keeping Catherine's friends at bay when they wanted to tell me about God's plan or how Lily was in a better place. "If one more person tells me everything happens for a reason," Sarah had whispered fiercely, "I'm going to commit a crime." But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was the reception afterward at Catherine and William's estate. Rachel cornered me by the bathroom, her eyes red. Not from crying, I realized, but from the effort of trying to cry. "This must be so hard for you," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, especially knowing, well, if you'd been watching her more carefully. David found me sobbing in the bathroom and took me home. We never spoke about what Rachel had said, but I knew he'd heard about it because the next family dinner invitation was declined without consulting me. "We're not ready," he'd told his mother. "Emma needs time." Time. As if time could bring back our daughter, as if time could undo that moment when my hand had been just inches from her shoulder, when my voice had been forming her name, when everything could have been different if I'd been faster, better, more. I quit my teaching job. I couldn't bear to be around children, their voices and laughter a constant reminder of what I'd lost. David threw himself into work, taking on project after project, coming home later and later. We moved through our house like ghosts, unable to look at each other without seeing Lily's absence reflected back. Her room remained untouched, the door closed, a shrine to a life cut short. The cemetery became my refuge. Every morning before dawn, I'd sit by her grave and tell her about my dreams. Sometimes they were memories, her first word, butterfly, her first steps, straight into David's arms, the way she'd scrunch her nose when she laughed. Sometimes they were fantasies about the life she should have had, first day of kindergarten, learning to ride a bike, teenage arguments about curfews, walking her down the aisle someday. But mostly, I just apologized. Over and over, I told her how sorry I was for failing her, for not being the mother she deserved, for letting go of her hand at the worst possible moment. Which brings me back to that morning, to Dr. Peterson's call, to the impossible words, "There's been a mistake." I drove to the hospital in a daze, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The parking garage felt like a maze, and I got lost twice trying to find the elevator to the 4th floor. Dr. Peterson's office was at the end of a long hallway, past the NICU where I'd once volunteered, reading to premature babies while their parents worked. The door was closed, but he must have been watching for me because it opened before I could knock. Dr. Marcus Peterson was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the sort of careful precision in his movements that suggested he'd learned to control every gesture to avoid alarming anxious parents. His office was small, cramped with medical journals and family photos. A silver-framed picture on his desk showed 2 young boys, twins by the look of them, grinning at the camera with gap-toothed smiles. "Mrs. Hartley, please sit down." He gestured to a chair across from his desk, then closed the door and locked it. The click of the lock sent ice through my veins. "What's going on? What mistake?" My voice sounded strange, too high, like someone else was speaking. He sat down heavily, rubbing his face with both hands before meeting my eyes. "Mrs. Hartley, I need to ask you something first, and I need you to be completely honest. Has anyone from your family, your husband's family specifically, contacted you about Lily since the funeral? Any unusual requests or comments?" "What? No, we haven't spoken to them much. David's been handling... Why are you asking me this?" He pulled out a folder, thick with papers, and set it between us. "6 weeks ago, your daughter was brought to this hospital after a traffic accident. She was pronounced dead at the scene by paramedics, and the body was transported here for official confirmation and preparation for the funeral home. I know all this." The words came out sharp, angry. "I lived it. Why are you—" "The child who was buried in Riverside Cemetery," he interrupted gently, "was not your daughter." The room tilted. I gripped the arms of the chair, certain I was about to faint or wake up from this cruel dream. "That's not possible." "I'm afraid it is. Yesterday, we received a court order to exhume the body as part of an investigation into systematic fraud at Morrison Family Chapel, your in-laws' funeral home. The DNA test was completed this morning. The child in your daughter's grave is a girl named Maria Santos, who died the same day in a house fire in the city. Her body was somehow switched with your daughter's. Then where? I couldn't finish the sentence. Where was Lily? Where was my baby? That's where this gets complicated. He opened the folder, pulling out what looked like medical charts. Your daughter survived the accident, Mrs. Hartley. She's alive. The words didn't make sense. They were just sounds, meaningless noise that couldn't possibly mean what they seemed to mean. That's not... I saw her. David saw her body. You saw a body. A child with similar features, similar age, who had been in a traumatic accident. The funeral home presented her as your daughter, and in your grief, neither you nor your husband questioned it. Why would you? Where is she? My voice was barely a whisper now. Where is Lily? His face darkened. She's been at a private medical facility in Switzerland for the past 6 weeks, registered under a false name. She was in a coma for the first 3 weeks, but she's conscious now. She's been asking for you. Switzerland? How? Who would? Oh my God. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Catherine. He nodded grimly. The investigation suggests that when your daughter survived the accident with severe but treatable injuries, someone at the hospital was paid to declare her dead and arrange for her to be secretly transferred overseas. The Morrison family's financial records show large withdrawals consistent with private medical care and bribes. We believe they intended to wait until you and your husband had grieved and moved on, then miraculously find Lily and raise her themselves, claiming you were unfit parents who couldn't handle her survival. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. It burned through the grief, the guilt, the months of agony, leaving only a white-hot fury that made my vision blur. They let me believe my daughter was dead. They let me bury another child. They let me sit at her grave every morning for 6 weeks while she was alone and scared in another country. There's more. He pulled out another document. The facility in Switzerland has been cooperating with our investigation. They were told Lily was an orphan, that her parents had died in the accident. But she keeps telling them her name, your name, insisting her mommy will come get her. The staff became suspicious and contacted Interpol, which led to our investigation here. I need to go to her, now, today. I stood up, my legs shaky but determined. How do I get to her? There's a flight leaving in 4 hours. The FBI has arranged for you to be on it, along with an agent who will help coordinate with Swiss authorities. But Mrs. Hartley... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Your daughter has been through significant trauma. She has some scarring from the accident, and she's been told various lies about why you haven't come for her. She may be confused, even angry. You'll need to be prepared for that. She's alive, I said, the words finally sinking in. My baby is alive. Nothing else matters. What about your husband? Should we contact him? I thought about David, about how he'd been pulling away, how he'd started spending time at his parents' house again despite everything. Had he known? Had he been part of this? No, I said firmly. Not until I understand what happened. Not until I have Lily back. Dr. Peterson stood up, walking around the desk to put a gentle hand on my shoulder. There's a victim advocate waiting outside who will take you home to pack and then to the airport. The FBI will want to interview you during the flight. And Mrs. Hartley, I'm so sorry this happened to you, but your daughter is alive and she's going to be okay. I nodded, unable to speak through the tears that were finally coming. Not tears of grief this time, but something else entirely. Hope, terror, rage, all mixed together into an emotion I didn't have a name for. The victim advocate was a woman named Janet, mid-50s with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. She drove me home in an unmarked car, waiting in the living room while I threw clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands. I packed Lily's favorite stuffed elephant, the one she'd called Mr. Peanuts, and the blanket she'd slept with every night. The one that still smelled faintly of her baby shampoo because I'd been afraid to wash it. I also grabbed something else, the folder I'd hidden in my closet, filled with every document related to the accident, the funeral, the death certificate. Evidence, though I hadn't known that's what it would become. As we drove to the airport, Janet finally spoke. The agent you'll be meeting is Special Agent Sarah Chen. She specializes in crimes against children and has been leading this investigation for the past week. She'll explain everything we know so far. How many other families? I asked suddenly. How many other children were taken? Janet's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. We're still determining that. The Morrison Family Chapel has been in operation for 40 years. 40 years. How many parents had sat by graves mourning children who weren't there? How many children had been stolen, sold, trafficked, or worse? The scope of it made me dizzy. At the airport, I was whisked through security and onto a small government plane. Agent Chen was already aboard, a compact woman with sharp eyes and an air of controlled intensity. She waited until we were airborne before opening her laptop and showing me everything they'd discovered. The conspiracy was more extensive than Dr. Peterson had revealed. The Morrison family hadn't just taken Lily. They'd been running an underground network for decades, identifying suitable children from unsuitable families. Sometimes it was about inheritance, ensuring the right child would inherit family fortunes. Sometimes it was about revenge, punishing daughters-in-law or sons-in-law who didn't fall in line. And sometimes, like in Lily's case, it was about control. Your mother-in-law, Catherine Morrison, has been the mastermind, Agent Chen explained, showing me financial records that made my stomach turn. She's been obsessed with the idea that you and David were raising Lily wrong, that she could do better. When the accident happened, she saw an opportunity. The original plan was to declare Lily dead, let you grieve and likely divorce David. Statistics show most marriages don't survive the loss of a child, then have Lily found and awarded to them as guardians. But why Switzerland? She needed time for you to fully grieve, to move on. Also, the facility there specializes in reconstructive surgery. Lily's injuries, while not life-threatening after treatment, left some facial scarring. Catherine wanted that fixed before revealing her. Survival. She couldn't have an imperfect grandchild. The fury was back, stronger than before. What about David? Is he part of this? Agent Chen pulled up phone records. We don't believe so. His phone shows no communication with the facility or anyone involved in the conspiracy. However, she paused, clearly reluctant to continue. Tell me. His sister Rachel has been in regular contact with the facility. She's been sending videos of herself to Lily, introducing herself as Aunt Rachel, who loves you so much, and telling Lily that she'll be coming to live with her soon. I thought about Rachel's words at the funeral, her barely concealed satisfaction at my pain. She'd known. She'd stood there watching me fall apart, knowing my daughter was alive, and she'd enjoyed it. What happens when we land? I asked. You'll be taken directly to the facility. Lily is stable and expecting someone to come for her, though she doesn't know it's you. We'll have a child psychologist there to help facilitate the reunion. After that, we'll return to the States, where Catherine, William, and Rachel Morrison will be arrested, along with several employees of the funeral home and at least 2 staff members from St. Mary's Hospital. And then? Then you get your daughter back, and they go to prison for a very long time. The rest of the flight passed in a blur of documents and evidence, each piece more damning than the last. The Morrison family had kept detailed records, apparently so confident in their wealth and power that they never imagined being caught. There were emails between Catherine and Rachel discussing how to properly raise Lily, plans for which boarding schools she would attend, which families' children she would be allowed to play with. They'd already set up a trust fund in her name, with themselves as executors, of course. There was also something else, something that chilled me to the bone. Medical records showing they'd had Lily's DNA tested to confirm she was really David's child, as if I'd ever been unfaithful, as if they had any right to question her parentage. But no, they just wanted to make sure she was pure Morrison blood before going to all this trouble. We landed in Zurich as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the tarmac. A convoy of Swiss police vehicles waited for us, along with officials from the American embassy. The drive to the medical facility took 2 hours, winding through mountains that would have been beautiful if I could have focused on anything other than the fact that my daughter was at the end of this journey. The facility looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital, all glass and steel nestled against a mountainside. Inside, it smelled of money and antiseptic, that particular combination that says we can afford to hide the hospital smell but choose not to entirely. Dr. Hoffman, the facility director, met us in a conference room with the child psychologist, a gentle-looking woman named Dr. Berger. They'd been briefed on the situation and looked appropriately horrified. "The child you know as Lily is in our pediatric wing," Dr. Hoffman explained in accented English. "She's been told that someone special is coming to see her today, but not who. We thought it best to let you surprise her." "How is she?" My voice cracked on the question. "Physically, she's healing well. The injuries to her face and left arm have been treated, though there will be some permanent scarring. Emotionally," he glanced at Dr. Berger. "She's confused," the psychologist said gently. "She insists her name is Lily, not Sophie as she was registered here. She talks constantly about her mommy and daddy, about a purple butterfly dress, about someone called Mr. Peanuts. The staff who raised concerns noted that her details were too specific, too consistent to be fantasy. But she's also been told repeatedly that her parents are dead, that her Aunt Rachel is her family now. She may not believe you at first." "Can I see her now?" They led me through pristine hallways to the pediatric ward. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. 6 weeks. She'd been alone for 6 weeks, thinking I was dead, thinking I'd abandoned her. The guilt was almost unbearable, even though none of this was my fault. Dr. Berger stopped at a door decorated with paper butterflies. "She made those," she said softly. "She's been obsessed with butterflies since she arrived." Through the window, I could see her, my Lily. She was sitting on the bed, coloring in what looked like a butterfly coloring book. Her hair was shorter, and I could see the pink lines of healing scars on her left cheek and arm. But it was her. The way she held the crayon, the little furrow between her eyebrows when she concentrated, the way she hummed while she colored. It was all Lily. "Oh my God," I breathed, my hand pressed against the glass. "My baby." "Are you ready?" Dr. Berger asked. I nodded, unable to speak. She opened the door slowly, and Lily looked up. For a moment, our eyes met, and I saw confusion flicker across her face. Then, like the sun breaking through clouds, recognition dawned. "Mommy?" Her voice was smaller than I remembered, uncertain. "Mommy, is that you?" "Yes, baby, it's me. I'm here. But Aunt Rachel said you went to heaven. She said you and Daddy went to heaven and I have to live with her now." I crossed the room in 3 strides, falling to my knees beside her bed. "No, sweetheart, I'm right here. I've been looking for you. I've been looking for you everywhere." She studied my face with those serious green eyes, her father's eyes, and then her little hand reached out to touch my cheek. "You're crying," she observed. "Are you sad?" "No, baby. These are happy tears. I'm so happy to see you." "I got hurt," she said, showing me her scarred arm. "A big truck hit me, and then I woke up here and everyone talks funny. And Aunt Rachel keeps visiting, but I don't like her. She smells like the mean perfume." I gathered her into my arms, careful of her healing injuries, and she melted against me, her little body shaking with sobs. "I wanted you," she cried. "I wanted you, but they said you were gone, and I had to be brave, but I didn't want to be brave. I wanted my mommy." "I'm here now," I whispered into her hair, which still smelled like her, underneath the hospital shampoo. "I'm here, and I'm never leaving you again. Never." "Promise?" "I promise." "Pinky promise?" I pulled back enough to link my pinky with hers, our sacred vow that had started when she was 2 and learned about promises from a cartoon. "Pinky promise." "Where's Daddy?" The question I'd been dreading. "Daddy's at home. We'll see him soon." I hoped that was true, hoped David hadn't known, hoped our marriage could survive not just the grief, but the betrayal of his family. Did you bring Mr. Peanuts?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the stuffed elephant. Her face lit up as she clutched him to her chest, and for the first time in 6 weeks, I saw my daughter's real smile. "The butterflies kept me company," she said, pointing to her paper decorations. "I made them because you like butterflies." "I love them. Should we bring them home with us?" "We can go home?" Her eyes went wide with hope. "Yes, baby, we're going home." The next hours were a blur of paperwork, medical consultations, and legal procedures. Lily clung to me through it all, refusing to let go of my hand, even when the doctors needed to examine her. She developed a fear of being alone, Dr. Berger explained, which was hardly surprising given what she'd been through. Agent Chen coordinated with law enforcement in the States. By the time we were ready to leave the facility, Catherine, William, and Rachel Morrison had been arrested, along with 6 employees of the funeral home and 3 hospital staff members. The news was already breaking back home, though my name was being kept out of it for now. David had been brought in for questioning but quickly cleared. Agent Chen showed me the video of his reaction when they told him Lily was alive. He'd collapsed, sobbing so hard they'd had to call for medical assistance. Whatever else had happened between us, whatever distance grief had created, he hadn't known. His pain had been real. On the flight home, Lily slept curled against me, Mr. Peanuts clutched in one arm, her other hand gripping mine even in sleep. Agent Chen sat across from us, typing up reports and fielding calls. The story was exploding, 40 years of crimes being uncovered, dozens of families being notified that their children's deaths might not have been what they seemed. "What happens to them?" I asked quietly, not wanting to wake Lily. "The Morrisons? They'll likely die in prison. The conspiracy charges alone carry life sentences, and that's before we get to kidnapping, fraud, and human trafficking. Rachel's husband is already filing for divorce and seeking full custody of their children. Apparently, he had no idea what his wife was capable of. And the money? Frozen, pending civil lawsuits. You'll be able to sue for damages, though I imagine that's the last thing on your mind right now." She was right. Money meant nothing. Having Lily's warm weight against me, hearing her breathing, feeling her heartbeat, that was everything. "There's something else," Agent Chen said carefully. "The media is going to be all over this. You might want to consider staying somewhere else for a while, somewhere they won't find you." I thought about our little house, about Lily's room that had become a shrine, about the cemetery where I'd spent every morning for 6 weeks talking to a grave that held a stranger's child. "We'll figure it out," I said. "As long as we're together, we'll figure it out." David was waiting at the airport. Agent Chen had called him, told him we were coming. He stood at the gate, thinner than I'd ever seen him, his face gaunt with grief that was transforming into something else. Hope, disbelief, joy, and rage all at once. When he saw us, saw Lily asleep in my arms, he made a sound I'd never heard before, something between a sob and a laugh. Lily woke at the sound, blinking in the harsh airport lights. "Daddy?" "Hi, Princess," he managed, tears streaming down his face. "Hi, my beautiful girl." She reached for him, and he gathered us both into his arms, the 3 of us standing there in the middle of the airport, clinging to each other while travelers streamed around us and Agent Chen kept the gathering reporters at bay. "My parents," David said into my hair. "My own parents. How could they—" "Later," I whispered. "We'll deal with it all later. Right now, let's just go home." But home wasn't safe. The media had already discovered our address, and news vans lined our street. Agent Chen had anticipated this and directed us to a safe house the FBI maintained for witness protection. It was a modest 2-story in a quiet suburb an hour away, fully furnished and stocked with groceries. That first night, Lily insisted on sleeping between us, afraid that if she closed her eyes, we'd disappear again. David and I lay on either side of her, our hands meeting over her small body, neither of us able to sleep. We watched her breathe, memorizing her face all over again, seeing past the scars to the miracle of her survival. I identified the body, David whispered in the darkness. I looked at that child and said it was Lily. How did I not know? They told us it was her, I reminded him. We were in shock. Why would we question it? My mother planned this. While we were planning a funeral, she was planning to steal our daughter. His voice was thick with rage and disgust. She let us bury someone else's child. That little girl, Maria Santos. Her parents never got to say goodbye because of my family. We'll make sure they get to now, I promised. We'll make sure they know what happened to her. In the morning, Lily woke screaming from a nightmare, calling for me, terrified I'd been taken away again. It would become a pattern over the coming weeks, the nightmares, the fear of abandonment, the need to constantly verify that we were real and present. Dr. Berger had connected us with a child trauma specialist in the city, and we started therapy immediately. The legal proceedings moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming, and public outrage made bail impossible for any of the conspirators. Catherine Morrison, the woman who'd worn pearls to breakfast and thought she knew best how to raise everyone's children, was photographed in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. The image went viral, becoming a symbol of privilege and corruption. Rachel tried to cut a deal, claiming she'd been manipulated by her mother, that she'd only wanted what was best for Lily. But the emails Agent Chen had shown me were damning. Rachel had been the one to suggest Switzerland, the one to research facilities, the one to visit Lily and tell her lies about our deaths. She'd enjoyed our pain, reveled in it, seen it as justice for some imagined slight. The hardest part was explaining it all to Lily in terms a 3-year-old could understand. Why Grandma Catherine was on TV looking angry, why we couldn't go to our real house, why Aunt Rachel wouldn't be visiting anymore. They made a very bad choice, I told her, holding her on my lap while David made lunch. They told lies and hurt people. Did they hurt me? I chose my words carefully. They took you away from us when you were hurt instead of bringing you home. That was wrong. Are they in timeout? Yes, baby. A very long timeout. Good, she said firmly, with that black and white moral certainty that only children possess. Lying is bad. Mrs. Johnson at preschool says lying is the worstest thing. Preschool. She'd been supposed to start preschool the week after the accident. Another thing stolen from her, from us. But we'd get it back. We'd get it all back, differently than before, scarred and changed, but still ours. The trial date was set for 6 months out, but the federal prosecutor assured us it was merely a formality. With 17 defendants all pointing fingers at each other, trying to minimize their own involvement, the case was solid. Several had already pled guilty in exchange for testimony against the others. We used those 6 months to heal. David took a leave of absence from work, and I didn't even consider returning to teaching yet. We focused entirely on Lily, on helping her feel safe again. We moved to a new house in a different school district, one where the Morrison name meant nothing. We found a new pediatrician, one who specialized in trauma recovery. We created new routines, new traditions, careful to incorporate the old ones that didn't trigger memories of the accident. Lily's scars faded from angry pink to silver lines. She started sleeping through the night again, though always with Mr. Peanuts and often with one of us nearby. She made friends at her new preschool, children who didn't know her story, who just saw a girl who liked butterflies and singing made-up songs. The day of Catherine Morrison's sentencing, I sat in the courtroom with David's hand in mine. Lily was at home with my mother, finger painting and baking cookies, blissfully unaware of the proceedings. Catherine, who'd aged a decade in 6 months, stood as the judge read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. She turned to look at us then, and I expected to see remorse, maybe even an apology. Instead, her eyes held the same cold disdain they always had. Even now, even after everything, she believed she'd been right, that she would have been a better mother to Lily than I could ever be. Your Honor, I said, standing when invited to give a victim impact statement. Catherine Morrison didn't just steal my daughter. She stole 6 weeks of her life, 6 weeks of our lives. She let us believe our child was dead. She let us grieve, let us blame ourselves, let us nearly destroy our marriage with guilt and pain. She did this because she believed that her money, her name, her status made her more deserving of my daughter than the parents who loved her. She was wrong. Lily is home now, where she belongs, with parents who would move heaven and earth for her. And Catherine Morrison will never, ever have power over our family again. William Morrison got 25 years. At 73, it was effectively a life sentence. Rachel got 30 years, her tears and pleas for her own children falling on deaf ears. The funeral home employees got sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years, depending on their level of involvement. The hospital staff who'd been bribed faced both criminal charges and the loss of their medical licenses. But the most unexpected outcome came from Maria Santos's family, the little girl we'd unknowingly buried, whose parents had been told she'd been cremated after the house fire, finally got a proper burial. We attended, standing in the back. Two families united by the strangest and most horrible of circumstances. Maria's mother, still learning English, took my hands and said simply, "Thank you for caring for her." We visited her grave together sometimes, leaving flowers for a child we'd never met, but had mourned as our own. David's relationship with his family was, of course, destroyed. But he found something else in its place. Freedom. Freedom from their expectations, their judgments, their conditional love. He started his own architecture firm, specializing in affordable housing and community centers. He designed a butterfly garden for Lily's new school, which became her favorite place to play. The Morrison fortune, what was left after legal fees and settlements, was placed in trust for the victims. We could have claimed millions, but we only took enough to cover Lily's medical expenses and therapy. The rest went to other families, to Maria Santos's parents, to funds for missing children. Money had been the weapon used against us. We wouldn't let it define our recovery. 3 years have passed now. Lily is 6, starting first grade next week. Her scars are barely visible, just silver lines that she sometimes traces with her finger when she's thinking. She knows her story now, in age-appropriate terms. She knows she was lost and then found. She knows bad people tried to take her, but good people brought her home. She knows she is loved, fiercely and unconditionally, by parents who will never, ever let her go again. The nightmares are rare now, though she still sleeps with Mr. Peanuts. She's brave and bright and funny, telling elaborate stories about butterfly princesses and singing songs she makes up on the spot. She's also careful in parking lots, holding hands tighter than most kids her age, but that's okay. Some lessons, even hard ones, are worth keeping. David and I survived too, our marriage stronger for having been tested by the unimaginable. We had another child last year, a boy we named Samuel. Lily adores her baby brother, calling him her baby and insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to bottle feeding. She sings him the same made-up songs she used to sing to herself, and sometimes I catch her whispering to him about butterflies and red balloons, keeping him safe with her words. We still visit the cemetery sometimes, but not Lily's false grave. That headstone has been removed, the plot given to Maria Santos. Instead, we go to the butterfly garden at the park, the one dedicated to all the children who found their way home. Lily doesn't know it was donated in her honor. She just knows it's a place where butterflies dance and families picnic, and no one ever has to let go of the people they love. The Red Balloon Man still sets up on the corner of Main and Elm every Thursday. We've walked past him dozens of times now, Lily always waving, sometimes buying a balloon, but always, always holding it tight. She's learned to tie them to her wrist, double knotted, secure. But more importantly, she's learned that even if a balloon flies away, even if something terrible happens, even if the world seems to end, her parents will always, always find her and bring her home. Last month, I got a letter forwarded through the prosecutor's office. It was from Catherine Morrison, writing from federal prison. I almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won. It was exactly what I expected. No apology, no remorse, just a long justification of how she'd been trying to save Lily from our inadequate parenting. She ended by saying that someday Lily would understand what she'd lost by not being raised as a proper Morrison. I showed it to David, who read it once and then fed it to the shredder. "She still doesn't get it," he said. "She never will." But I kept one line from that letter, not because it was true, but because it proved how wrong Catherine had always been. She wrote, "That child could have had everything. She was wrong. Lily already has everything. She has parents who love her, a baby brother who adores her, grandparents, my parents, who spoil her appropriately, and a future that belongs to her alone. She has butterfly gardens and made-up songs and Mr. Peanuts and the absolute certainty that she is wanted, cherished, and protected. Most importantly, she has the truth. The truth that love isn't about money or status or the right schools or the proper way to fold napkins. Love is about showing up every day, especially the hard days. It's about fighting for your child against impossible odds. It's about believing, even when the world tells you otherwise, that miracles can happen. 6 weeks. That's how long I believed my daughter was dead. That's how long she believed I was gone. That's how long Catherine Morrison thought she'd won. But 6 weeks is nothing compared to a lifetime. 6 weeks is nothing compared to the years we have ahead, the memories we'll make, the love we'll share. Sometimes I dream about that day, about the red balloon floating away, about my hand just missing Lily's shoulder. In the dream, I catch her. I pull her back. The truck passes harmlessly by. We go home and have dinner and read bedtime stories, and none of this ever happens. But then I wake up and I hear Lily singing to Samuel in the next room, and I realize that even though I couldn't prevent the accident, even though we went through hell, we survived. We're here. We're together. We're home. The Morrisons thought they could buy my daughter, steal her, reshape her into their image. They thought money and power meant they could play God with our lives. They were wrong. Love won, truth won, we won. And every morning, when Lily bounces into our room, climbs into our bed, and says, "Good morning, Mommy. Good morning, Daddy. Is it a butterfly day?" Every morning, I know that we didn't just survive this story, we triumphed. End. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story moved you, and if you believe that every parent deserves the truth about their child, please like on this video and we share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Comment below. And tell me, what was the moment in the story that resonated with you the most? And if you want more powerful stories about finding your strength and overcoming the odds, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's next.